Croeso I Skomer live.
Ah, I knew you'd
How was that?
It's good. We've been working on his Welsh.
Yeah.
He's been doing a brilliant job. You'll
I've
be
really-
fluent by tomorrow.
I will. I'll be fluent. I've really enjoyed my time here in Wales, so I wanted to embrace the language a little bit.
Yeah, we've had a week full of Skomerness, if that's even a word.
I love that
If
word.
it's not, it should be now.
It should be.
So yeah, we've touched on lots of the iconic species across the island. We've had your questions coming in. We've been touching base with the wardens every day, and today is no different. We'll be chatting to Head Warden Leighton. Looking forward to that, and also having very special guest Mark Burton. Maybe said his name wrong then. How can I forget?
Almost.
The legend himself. So yeah, lots to expect from today. We'll be talking about some beetles, won't we?
Yep. Yeah, all sorts of invertebrates really.
Yeah.
Yeah, and don't forget, please do send us in your comments and questions because we'd love to hear from you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So every day we start with a competition.
We do.
It has been a bit difficult over the past 2 days, so we're going to bring it down. Not that this isn't difficult, but we've thrown a bit of a curveball. Have a look at this picture. We want you to guess the chick. So I'm hoping Mark and Leighton today will know what this is. I'm sure.
Okay.
They
Yeah,
will.
I do think this is slightly easier than our last competitions. Yesterday's one was quite hard, to be honest.
Yeah, so there's a few things, where it's coming out of, this
Yeah.
chick.
How much are we allowed to say?
Oh, I don't want to give away too many clues. I feel like hopefully more people will get today's compared to yesterday's with the calls or some of the tales as well. It's a bit tricky.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so let us know at the end what you think and we'll reveal the answers.
We will indeed. But now I'm really excited because until now I haven't really been able to talk about my favourite subject on this series. We're going to talk about insects, aren't we?
Yeah. Yeah,
so, what sort of insects did we get on Skomer?
Well, when we were on the other day, we saw lots of pollinators. I saw lots of butterflies around. We saw some hoverflies. You get bees on the island, of course. It's a really, at this time of year, it's buzzing with pollinators. And of course, some of our favourite moths, which are often overlooked. And of course, we all know that there are so many more moth species than there are butterfly species. There's about 2,500. So some of the moths that we've actually had on the island over time include the cinnabar moth, which is a lovely moth, lovely kind of red stripes down the main wings of that moth. We have a picture of a spectacle moth as well. Again, lovely kind of brown colour, very well camouflaged. Kind of reminds me of a buff-tail moth.
Yeah, I can say. Very pretty in its own right.
Yeah, kind of very well camouflaged and just a wonderful moth. We've got the emperor moth as well with the lovely eye spots on the wing. Do you have a favourite moth?
Beautiful. Yeah, hummingbird moth.
Okay, well, we also get them on the island.
There we go,
here's a picture. Of course, the hawk moths are the showstoppers really of the moth family. I don't know if you at home moth trap, but I even had a bit of a go over the lockdown and a few weeks ago at Park Slip Nature Reserve as well. It's a brilliant number of moths there. So it's a great activity you can do at home. Even you can just get a sheet up at night time and shine a light and see what moth species you get there. And of course, a lot of our moths are actually daytime flying as well. So a very important pollinator. We really need to be celebrating moths more, and it's great to see celebration of that on the island.
Definitely. And this week is actually National Moth Week, so we're going to celebrate it even more.
Happy National Moth Week.
Happy National Moth Week. And I kind of feel like moths often get a bad rep. They're sort of like the ugly cousins of the butterflies. But I think they're just as beautiful, if not more.
Actually, there's many of them that are as vibrant, if not more, really, aren't they? Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's not just moths on the island, of course, in terms of bug life. We've also got a lot of beetles.
I love beetles,
We've got cockchafers, which are very charismatic. They have those feathery antennae.
Yeah.
They fly around in the evening time. They're not afraid to get in your face. Little helicopters whizzing by. We have thick-legged flower beetles, which are excellent pollinators. Pretty much as good as bees, to be honest. We often think about bees being pollinators, but beetles also help to pollinate. We've got dung beetles on the island, and not many people know that we actually have dung beetles in the UK because they're kind of an exotic when you think about dung beetles. And they, of course, like to drag the poo into their burrows. They like to roll that poo.
Iconic dung beetle activity.
And the larvae of the dung beetle feed on that poo. So, yeah, it sounds delicious, doesn't it?
There's lots. Do you know, I studied beetles for my master's. I looked at electroreception in Adalia bipunctata, which is the ladybird larvae. Yeah.
I didn't know you were such a nerd.
I'm about to bring this down a whole level. So let's move on from that.
Well, there is another beetle I do want to talk about.
Oh, yeah. The glowworms.
The glowworm, which are not actually worms. They're beetles.
Do you get them on the island?
We do, yeah. So the males look like beetles. They have that hard wing case. They have the wings. But it's actually the females that are the interesting ones. Because when they grow up from larvae, they don't really look that much different. They stay pretty similar to the larvae. But it's, of course, that charismatic, glowing bottoms that they have. And everyone knows a glowing
bottom?
Glowing bottom? What am I saying? But basically, they use that glowing bottom to attract the males.
Mm.
And they do that using a chemical reaction. It's a chemical called luciferin, which reacts with oxygen and creates that bioluminescent greeny-orange glow, which is amazing. But sadly, because of humans and because of light pollution, it can have pretty detrimental effects on their breeding populations, because the glowworms can confuse the street lights and things like that for, well, a female glowworm. So
That's so interesting. Yeah.
it can impact their numbers. And because those females don't have wings, it means it's quite hard for them to repopulate areas. So
Yeah, they seem to be facing massive decline in
They are,
areas where they
sadly.
can be found. But they're so brilliant, glowworms. I wish kind of we saw more of them. But
Yeah.
if you, best activity is to go out searching for glowworms, I think,
Yeah.
especially
yes,
yeah,
definitely.
right times of year. Another story about light pollution. I mean, there's many different species that are now being impacted by light pollution, and this, as a theme, if you like, is an increasing one for a lot of our species in our natural world. And this is no different on Skomer Island. In fact, here's Martina from Oxford University to tell us more about how light pollution is impacting the Manx shearwater.
Hi everyone, I'm Martina Sipos and I'm a PhD student at the University of Oxford. I have been studying the effects of light pollution on seabirds, and I have been lucky enough to spend last 3 summers doing fieldwork on the largest colony of Manx shearwaters in the world, the Skomer Island. It is not well known, but seabirds are affected by light pollution all around the world. In autumn, thousands of juvenile shearwater chicks fledge at night to avoid predators. Sometimes, during the first flight, they are coming to nearby towns or cities because of the light. Eventually, they get tired and they land on the ground. This is called grounding. If you are a shearwater, the ground is not a safe place. The body of a shearwater is adapted for spending most of its life at sea, where they can manage takeoff by running along the water. But on the land, they need a bit more help. Normally, a gust of wind, a slope, or a long runway allow them to take off. But of course, cars and buildings form a barrier. Stranded fledglings in coastal towns need dedicated volunteers to pick them up and release them back to the sea. Otherwise, they may be hit by a car or eaten by a predator. Fortunately, near to Skomer Island, there are only a few records of Manx shearwaters grounding in coastal towns every year. More concerning, however, are large boats anchoring near Skomer. Previous research showed that grounding on vessels can happen, but it can be limited with correct lighting. So part of my work has been to investigate what kind of lights might impact shearwaters the least. By turning a bright torch on and off and recording the flight behavior of Manx shearwaters using a thermal camera, we could see for the first time how shearwaters respond to artificial light. It was quite astonishing to see the details of nocturnal flight of these seabirds. There were so many of them flying so quickly above our heads. It is fascinating thought how they navigate so that they don't hit each other in the darkness. To reduce the disturbance to the colony during the night, visitors and staff of Skomer Island use red light. But is this really the right choice? I tested this by using a normal white torch and then blue, green and red color filters. Footage from the thermal camera revealed that indeed, red color disturbs Manx shearwaters the least. This research on Skomer Island can now inform environmental policies measures in many places where seabirds are endangered and declining. Because light pollution is increasing in the coastal areas and the conflict between people and seabirds is likely to continue, it is great to know that using red lights might reduce the impact of the settlements on birds. Though of course, there is still a lot to learn about how we can protect fledgling seabirds from light pollution. Thank you very much.
Of course, there's big tankers offshore. You don't really think of that, do you, at night time when
Not
they're
at all.
out on the ocean with those lights out? But
Yeah.
it makes sense.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's great to see that the research happening on the island is affecting their populations and it's being used.
Good news, and also I think maybe people who actually I spoke to someone who found a shearwater at like a local Sainsbury's on the coast or
Right,
something. So
really?
it's good to know what to do if you do
Mhm.
have a grounded bird
Absolutely.
that's kind of been blown off course. So yeah. Now we're going to be joining our head warden, aren't we, Leighton?
Yes, Leighton.
So Leighton, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi,
Leighton.
Leighton.
How's it going? You right?
How's it going on the island?
Yeah, it's pretty nice, thanks. It's beautiful weather today, so yeah, it's a beautiful place to be on a beautiful day.
Yeah, I'm jealous. We're going to be there tomorrow, and I can't wait.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How have
hopefully
you
the weather's
found
still
the
nice.
heat? Have you managed to continue your monitoring work?
Yeah, it's been quite nice today. We've had a bit of a breeze around, so yeah, been quite cooling. But the last few days have been really intense heat with barely any breeze, but really good for butterfly transects and things like that. So yeah, no, it's been okay.
Great. Well, I've been dying to ask you because last year we had the very exciting arrival of tree sparrows on the island, and I'm hoping that you'll say they've returned again this year. Is there any luck they have?
Unfortunately not, no. So obviously last year they stayed on the island, they bred. Very weirdly, they bred in a house martin nest box, which was very strange. But no, we haven't seen any sign of them this year. We've had house sparrows, but we've had no tree sparrows this year, unfortunately.
Okay.
It's a shame.
That is a shame.
Yeah.
Hopefully next year.
Yeah, lovely bird.
Now we do want to hear about plastic pollution, because obviously that's a big issue in the world. Does plastic pollution, does plastic wash up on the beaches of Skomer? Do you have to do beach cleans? Does it affect any of the breeding bird burrows? What's it like on the island?
Yeah, I mean, so some of the more exposed beaches, the southwesterly facing beaches, you can get a bit of plastic washing up on the beaches at times. They are quite exposed, so those big storms that come through often wash the beaches out. They're quite difficult places to get into to actually do the beach cleans. One, because of access, and two, because of the breeding birds. And when they're finished, the seals. So you've only got a very short window when you're actually able to get onto the beaches to do your beach cleans. So we do occasionally go down to the beaches and clean them out, but it has to be a very specific time of year. Most of the sort of plastic pollution we see is actually in the gull colonies on the island. Obviously, a lot of them have been feeding on landfill and things like that. So when you walk through the colonies, you see a lot of litter just sort of strewn through the breeding colonies. And we occasionally get reports of things like puffins and guillemots with a bit of fishing line or something like that around their neck. But actually, thankfully, it's very rare actually to have those reports.
Yeah, it's good to hear you don't have them kind of coming in all the time because that is an island that is so exposed. And you do see along that west coast certain areas that are exposed to huge amounts of plastic being kind of washed up on beaches and things. But yeah, really important place not to be entangling in the
Definitely.
nests of too many birds. So I also wanted to ask you about bioluminescence because there's been a big kind of influx at the moment, perhaps with warmer waters, of bioluminescent plankton being seen along the coast in the evenings in Wales. So have you had any on the island at all?
So I've only here, but yes, it wasn't like spectacular. We had like sort of some milky water along the shore, which was really cool to see. I've seen it out here in previous years, and it's been absolutely phenomenal. You just sort of splash yourself with water, and it just sort of sparkles. I've not had that this year, but maybe with this warm weather, and maybe I'll go out and check tonight and see if the sea is glowing.
Yeah. Hopefully see that. I'd love to see that.
I've seen it a fair few
Have you?
times in Pembrokeshire. And it's absolutely brilliant. So good. Do you know why plankton bioluminescent?
I guess it's something to do with like a predator defense, trying to keep predators away.
Yeah, it's as you mentioned earlier about luciferin. So it's this chemical reaction, and it's all about attracting animals that would therefore eat the plankton. So it's a great defense strategy. Well, hopefully you'll see more bioluminescence as well.
Hopefully. Now, Leighton, what I want to know is why do you get storm petrels on Skokum and not Skomer?
Well, we do get storm petrels over here. So Skokum have got just under 2,000 occupied sites, I think. We are on about 220 occupied sites, but so obviously they get far more than we do. It's all about habitat type, I would have thought. They've got a different rock type on Skokum. They've got sort of large boulder fields, and also their wall systems from the farming are also very different to ours. They're herringbone walls, and there's lots of space inside the walls for storm petrels to get into. So there's just more habitat for them out there. I'm sure if we had that sort of habitat, the big boulder fields and the herringbone walls, we'd probably have just as many, I would imagine.
Great, there we are.
Yeah.
Last question, Leighton, if I may, but a random one. But we've had a few people writing in saying, "Are the puffins still there? They'll be leaving soon." So, are there any signs of the island becoming empty of puffins?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of difficult to judge when the weather's so warm. When the weather's really warm, it's often quite quiet for puffins. We've seen some really amazing numbers in the evenings at the moment where the weather's starting to calm down a little bit. At the moment, I'm just in North Haven now. I can see maybe a few hundred puffins on the water and that sort of things. But I'd imagine as the evening comes in, there'll be more on the land. Obviously, a lot of puffins have left now, and it is starting to quieten down. But they're generally here right through until the end of the month and into the start of August as well.
Okay. People come and visit. It's always good to know, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Everyone wants to see a puffin, I think.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Leighton. You answered all our questions brilliantly.
Yeah, we'll see you tomorrow, actually. I think with all the
Yes.
wardens, won't we, for the finale?
We will. See you
Yeah.
tomorrow.
All right, nice one.
See you then. Thanks, Leighton.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Right. Now it's time for something a little bit different. A little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a bit.
We haven't really covered, so
No.
I guess it's kind of turning
Yeah.
to the wider environment,
Yeah.
isn't it?
So we're going to watch a little film about the marine wildlife around Skomer. I think you actually did this, didn't you?
It's just me walking along the coast again, talking rubbish.
Our
So
face again.
enjoy it. So this view behind me is, in my opinion, what makes Skomer Island. You've got the incredible tide ripping round the top here and creating this whole upwelling of nutrients, which will then go on to feed species like harbour porpoise, which are commonly seen on the crossing over to Skomer and in places like here. And behind that, you just have wild Welsh Sea. I can see a gannet heading out now, out to sea towards the Celtic Deep. You've got Grasshome Island in the far, but actually this is just a wonderful place to come and sit. Watch the cormorants, watch the rafting puffins, the seals that make the most of these more out of the way small islands and tiny bits of land to rest, to haul out on, to socialise, to have their pups. This is a really, really wonderful place for so many different species. And it's important to remember that the position of Skomer Island is one of the reasons why it is so rich in wildlife. It's one of the reasons why you've got such healthy eelgrass beds, why so much bird life is supported by the rich foods that you get here, and it's also one of the reasons why being in a marine conservation zone is so important, because as a result it's built this entire case study, if you like, this empire of what happens when you protect an area that we all know really needs conserving.
That was brilliant, Lizzie. Well done.
I just could spend hours walking around Skomer Island and just
Yeah.
and another thing and
Yeah.
and actually we saw those seals and we were watching those puffins. It was a kind of an atmospheric moment really, as you
Yeah.
stand on this headland just
Yeah.
overlooking vast seas. Brilliant.
There's so much biodiversity on the island, and it shows just how important the position of the island is to all that wildlife.
Yeah. Now next we're going to chat to Mark Burton, who's the Marine Environmental Monitoring Officer for Natural Resources Wales. He has been working within the wonderful marine conservation zone that's been established for over 30 years, for a number of years. I think it's almost 20 years. So he knows this area well. He's a keen diver. He knows everything there is to know about the species in this environment, and he's going to tell us more about why the marine conservation zone is so special. And I'm pretty sure he's wearing a pretty epic shirt as well, aren't you, Mark?
Yeah, got to keep your standards up.
Every time I talk to you, Mark, you've got some jazzy, epic shirt on. I don't know where you get them from, but I'd love one, I think.
Me too, yeah, they're awesome.
So where are you coming from? How has it been this past year? Last time we spoke on Skomer Live Series 1, things were very different, and I'm hoping you've got back in the water since then.
Well, only just, actually. We missed all of getting in the water last year. There was no diving at all. But the Skomer wardens helped us do the seals, and they also helped with the intertidal. So we got all that done. But yeah, diving, I'm afraid, was out. So it's only been in the last sort of 6 weeks we've got our feet wet again and jumped into the water.
Wow, so really not that long,
Not
to
that
be
long
honest.
at all.
Have you seen any big changes in that time at all?
Well, yeah, actually, we've just started doing the sea fans. Now, we normally do these back in May, so we're a good sort of 6 weeks late, I guess. But they're not looking very healthy, actually. I think they've missed us. They're looking very dejected. The tissue structure isn't very good. And the bull husks have been laying a lot of eggs. They've had a great time with the sea fans while we've not been there, and they're using them to secure their egg cases on. And I think it's getting to the point where we might have to just clean up some of the old egg cases, not the new ones. But yeah, that's the biggest change this year. We found the sea fans in a poorer condition than we've seen them before, and a lot more bull husk eggs.
Is that change across all the corals, so like the dead man finger coral as well, or is it just kind of the pink sea fans there?
Just the sea fans, I just said, that's the most notable. Everything else is looking pretty spectacular, and we have seen this before. This isn't the first time. Probably about 10 years ago, the sea fans really did dip in their quality, if you like. We've been losing sea fans. I guess my main worry for sea fans is what we're not seeing at the moment are baby sea fans. So we've got an aging population, which seems to be dropping in condition, and we're not seeing the youngsters coming through, the tiny little sticks of sea fans that you'd expect to see in a healthy population. So we have concerns about that particular species, but the rest of it is looking spectacular in the sunshine.
Amazing, that is good news. And why is it so important to preserve these areas, Mark?
Well, the whole of the oceans need our help, really, but little places like this, where you've got huge amounts of biodiversity, it really does help preserve our biodiversity list. It also helps perhaps exploited species and gives them a chance to totally recover and hopefully even start recruiting back into the natural population. And it's a place where we can actually go and understand what is actually happening here. We can do bits of research, we can support research, we can monitor long term what's going on, very similar to what they do on Skomer with the birds and the sea, totally linked, obviously.
Yeah, of course. I wanted to ask you about, because some people may not know what a marine conservation zone is. Of course, it does mean pretty much full protection of these areas. But as we move forward, we're going into a time with a new environmental plan in Wales. There's many different changes coming. So what are some of the most significant findings of having this marine conservation zone? And should it really be a kind of poster boy area for the future of how we should protect our waters?
That's a complicated question, but I think it is a poster. And it is a very representative site of most of Southwest Wales marine habitats in a very concentrated area. So in our sort of 15 kilometres squared, we do pack in most of what you will find in Wales. We're not, however, fully protected. There are types of fishing that are allowed, but the most damaging types of fishing are not allowed. So since 1990, there has been no dredging and no trawling. And that's had a massive effect. So it's had a direct effect on the scallop species that were targeted by that. But it took a long time. It's not a simple question. So it took about 10 years for those scallops to start edging up in their numbers. And then once their numbers really started going up, then they went exponential. So we could show that there was definite recovery. If you leave them alone long enough, and you might not get results in a political 5-year term, unfortunately, it might take 2 turns to get your results. But the results are spectacular once it kicks in. And that's been backed up over by the Isle of Man as well. So that's a very useful finding. But perhaps more importantly for me, that's one species doing very well. But we've actually then been able to see the biodiversity in the muds and the sands and the gravels where these scallops live. And we've now recorded over 1,000 species in those habitats, which is a huge amount of biodiversity. That's probably more than we've ever recorded on the rocks. So these muddy, dirty little areas are really, really important. And if you leave them alone, they can be very, very rich indeed.
That is unbelievable. Over 1,000.
1,000, that's incredible. Just in the mud and sand.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Phenomenal.
Now I know we've covered a few species there, Mark, but what sort of unusual species can you find in the reserve? I know there's a lot of nudibranchs.
Yeah, so sea slugs are a mollusk, and they're a predatory mollusk. They're a very specialist feeder. They're really fussy about what they'll eat. So if you have lots and lots of things, lots of different things, you'll end up with a big list of nudibranchs feeding on those different things. I think we've recorded 76 definite. I think we're actually up to 78 now. That's about 70% of the entire UK species list. That's over a 30-year period. So this is a long time we're talking here. But they're incredible beasts, and they just look like aliens, and they feed on the stinging cells of the animals that they're actually feeding on. And they're able to transport those stinging cells up into the top of their guts, into little processes called serrata, and they can use them for their own defense. So they not only eat their prey, they can use their prey's stinging cells for their own defense. And they're quite spectacular.
I can imagine. I am very jealous of all your dives. If there's kind of throwing in additional questions, because I haven't actually done a lot of diving around Skomer Island itself, but I've heard so much about the interaction even between the guan on the island and the biodiversity there. Do you have a favourite species when you go on a dive? Is there one thing that you look forward to? Is it the pink sea fans or?
I don't have a favourite species. I just like seeing every square inch covered in stuff is what blows me away, really. I like bringing the torches down there and seeing the colour, which just doesn't make sense to me because there is no coloured light. So why are these species so colourful? But they are spectacularly colourful. So they can obviously see stuff that we can't because they don't have torches. And I guess I just like seeing it year on year. And it, I think the situation is pretty positive. We might have a few species which are going down, but it's still an incredible place. And I'd imagine most people would be blown away by how much diversity and how much colour and how much beauty there is down there. Unfortunately, not many people get to see it, like you say.
Yeah, we'll have to live through your photos, I think.
Definitely. Definitely.
Well, thank you, Mark. Always good to chat to you, and always good to kind of recap the incredible species there. Looking forward to seeing more about what you find this year, and hopefully we'll get to talk to you again next year.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Thanks, Mark. Bye.
Right, what's next?
I'm always, by the way, if you get a chance to look at the species around Skomer Island in the Marine Conservation Zone, go online and just have a look, because it's really what Mark said. It's colourful. It's unbelievably colourful. Yeah. Righty-ho. Do we need to reveal the answers to the competition?
I think we're going to film first.
Oh, yes.
Seal monitoring.
Yeah.
So, of course, seals are apparent on Skomer Island. There's seals all over the place, grey seals. And the team do a lot of work with them, and they monitor them. So here's a film about seal monitoring.
So we're approaching quite an exciting time on Skomer. Over the next couple of months, we'll be seeing our first grey seal pups on the island, and we can expect to welcome around about 200, maybe just over 200 pups on Skomer this year. Our first pups are going to be born mid-August, with a peak of pupping in September. We have quite an intensive grey seal monitoring programme out here, and we individually mark every single pup that's born on the island, so we can follow their progress from the first few days after they're born right through until they've weaned after about 3 weeks, and also individually identifying each of the females that are on the beaches as well. So the females have a unique pattern on the pelage on the side of the neck there. We take photos of every female that has a pup on the island, and as well as marking the pups individually with the sheep spray, we're also trying to identify the females as well and trying to monitor their progress. And obviously they're born with this lovely white coat. It's quite stained with amniotic fluid. It's all yellow. It does turn white after a few days, and it allows us to mark the rump of the seal and follow the individual progress of that seal. They'll start molting after around about 15-16 days, something on those lines, start on their flippers and move up to the head, and the rest of the body should be molted by the time that they wean from the mother, which is after about 3 weeks. The milk that they're fed by the mother is really rich. It can be up to 50 or even 60% fat, and the pups can put on around about 2 kilos a day. So they really do balloon from these tiny little pups that are born right through into sort of 45 kilo, really ballooned out pups after about 3 weeks. We expect around about 77 or 78% of our pups born out here to survive the first 3 weeks and head out to sea then, and then they're independent, and it's up to them to find food rather than rely on the female for milk or anything along those lines.
And as we said before, this monitoring work happens later in the season, so there's always lots going on. I think the seal pups around our coast are a huge highlight of exploring our coast in those autumnal months. Also, kind of a big worry as we see more storms coming through as well. I've seen some pups in all sorts of conditions, but they're pretty hardy. You just have to make sure you don't disturb them, because they're obviously in a very sensitive time, aren't they?
Yeah. View them from a distance.
Yeah. So you've been in touch with some hellos. We're going to keep all your fantastic questions for tomorrow. We're actually going to do a special feature to go through all those questions in detail with the wardens and enjoy that together. So
Okay.
we have a hello from Patrick from Cambridge, hello from Norma from Plymouth, from Harley from Cardiff, Christine and Terry from Port Talbot. Love the show. Lovely to see you. A hello from Wendy M from Swansea. Thoroughly enjoyed the series. Skomer is amazing. Skomer is amazing, isn't it?
It is. I agree.
Hello from Madeline, watching from sunny Aisha, Scotland. Woohoo!
Scotland.
Brilliant to see you. And comment from John. John's asking, where did Mark get his shirt from? We're gonna have to ask him.
We'll have to find that out because I want to know as well.
I think we all want Mark's
We do.
shirts. It's fishy shirts. That's brilliant.
Right.
And in terms of the competition and that picture, we're going to show you that picture again.
Mhm.
Have a look at this. We
Hmm.
have 2 people.
We
Guess who?
do. We do. So, do we know what it is, Lizzie?
Well, Norma from Plymouth does, and Margaret does.
Well done, Norma and Margaret.
Yeah. So you go. You go. What do you
Me?
think it is?
Well, okay. So what's giving it away for me is that head and that bill.
Mm.
So I know a lot of people might be thinking Manx shearwater chick because fluffy grey. And as I've mentioned quite a few times on this show, I do love a fluffy grey Manx shearwater.
Yeah.
But that bill, that head, it's got to be a puffin.
It's a puffin, yeah. So I guess the burrow is the most obvious clue,
Yeah,
isn't
yeah,
it?
the
And
burrow.
yeah, just a lovely puffin chick.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well done, guys.
And we'll be seeing you tomorrow for the finale of Skomer Live. As I say, we'll get through all those questions. We've stored them all up. We'll also be revealing 3 of the winners of the competitions throughout this week. We'll have 1 more tomorrow, and we'll be picking them from a hat. And I think we'll also be running around the island potentially to bring you something very exciting live.
Quite warm, I think.
Yeah, warm again. All the wardens will be there. All the puffins will still be there. So plenty of action to bring you tomorrow.
Very excited. Awesome. Well, thank you for tuning in, guys. And like Lizzie said, tune in tomorrow at 6 again.
See you then.
See ya.
Bye all.